I have given a name to my pain.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
Hello and welcome to You'll Probably Agree. I'm Batman. And I'm surrounded. I had to kick all the bats out of the Batcave because apparently they spread COVID-19. I finally accomplished my full mission. I defeated all my enemies. But now I am my own worst enemy. And I knew that if I killed, I would go to a place I could never return from. And now I've killed a third of the world's population with COVID-19. It wasn't my fault, it was the bats. And now, I don't know what Alfred gave me. I think it was a fishy swell soup. I said it wrong, I don't care. And I'm dying.
Well,
hello,
Mr.
everyone, and welcome to You'll Probably Agree. I'm Mike Crawley, and get this shit off of me. And today I'm with my good friend Ian Simmons from KickingTheSeat.com. How are you today, Ian?
I'm doing well. I'm ready to talk about Batman 89. I'm here in my bat robe, as it were. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all good. But yes, I am here today and over in what I guess is the 1989 Batcave. I think this background is actually from the 92 sequel, Batman Returns.
Oh, I think I recognize the other car back there. Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah, but no, 89 Batman. I guess I wanted to bring this movie up because this was the first off, I do want to say a very heartfelt farewell to Joel Schumacher. I know he got a lot of flack with Batman Forever, but that movie did financially put Warner Brothers back in a very good position, because Batman Returns was sort of this crazy S&M freak show that I think turned off a lot of audiences. And Forever, although it wasn't quite my thing, it did get people back into Batman in a way by being a little dark and still campy. And there's so many other films that Schumacher made, such as my favorite one is 8mm, and then he did Falling Down. So he's got some good ones on his belt. But I thought of Batman 1989 because that was the movie that this mic stand sucks. All right, just keeps. Yeah, that was the movie that got me into making movies as a kid. I remember, if it was like 1980, that I was 3 years old when that movie came out. I think I was, yeah, I think I was about 5 when like I actually could like understand it when I watched it. And I just remember the only thing I knew about Batman before that was the Adam West sort of live action cartoon with all of its sort of strange, silly tags. And then I saw this darker version of this character where I realized, oh, you can take the same thing, but you can make it completely different. And to me, that sort of introduced me to how you could take anything that you like and make it your own with a movie. And that it always was a huge impact on me. I owned all the toys as a kid. I had the Joker toy where if you stuck his face in water, it would become flesh colored.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I didn't even know about that. Was that from the movie, or is that a different iteration of the action figures?
This was an action figure for the movie. This was Jack Nicholson Joker. And
Wow.
yeah, that was like one of the first toys I had. So I think like it wasn't flesh colored when you stuck it in water, but it was sort of like what they did with the prosthetic with Jack Nicholson in the movie. And I loved everything. I loved that movie. But what? So I guess with that, and I remember listening to the soundtrack to the film. I had it on a little cassette tape, right? And it would have Danny Elfman's score, and I closed my eyes and imagined the Phantom of the Opera for some reason with that score. And oddly enough, I found out years later that when they're going up to the steps of the cathedral, that was Jack Nicholson's idea and John Peters' idea, because they went to go see that very play that night. So then they sort of inadvertently created that whole climax of the film. What was your experience with Batman when it came out?
Well, I was 12 in 1989. So this was a very big and important movie for me. I was into comics. I'd been reading comics for a couple of years. I don't think I'd read Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns by that point, but I was definitely aware of Batman, and I liked the character. But I just remember the whole phenomenon of the Batman movie. This is pre-internet, but I think it was Starlog and all the different entertainment like papers and zines out there were running pieces about it. I think Premiere Magazine was the big thing back then and before EW. But I got so excited about it. I know there's a lot of people who are freaked out because Michael Keaton was going to be Batman. Like, Mr. Mom, really?
Yeah.
The same thing we would see, a decade and a half later with Heath Ledger's Joker.
Or Robert Pattinson. Yeah.
Yes, but I'm still waiting. Jury's still out on Mr. Pattinson.
Oh, no, I mean, I think he'll be fine. But the fan response is like, the Twilight guy, what? It was like,
right.
Just hey, history repeats itself. You'll see.
Yes, and I stand up for Robert Pattinson against that critique, but I'm still waiting to reserve judgment because he might, not be that great a Batman. I don't know. I think he'll be a cool Bruce Wayne. I just don't know about the Bat character, or maybe it's vice versa. Anyway, I remember my biggest memory was Mad Magazine, which I was a huge fan of, had Alfred E. Newman on the cover in the bat cowl. And I thought that was the coolest thing. And I think I read that parody. I might have read it before I saw the Batman movie. But going to see Batman for the first time, I saw a number of times over the summer. I was blown away by it because, as you mentioned, it's the darker version of the comics and what pop culture recognized as Batman. However, watching it years later, I saw how kind of goofy it was, and it's not as grim and gritty as certainly what Christopher Nolan would do years later. In fact, it might have been the Nolan Batmans that forced me to reevaluate just how "quote unquote" dark the Tim Burton versions were. Yeah, I was enamored with it. I thought Nicholson's Joker was just the coolest, and I really Keaton I think is still my favorite Bruce Wayne, and even to a certain extent my favorite Batman. Like, I think if they had had the articulated cowl that they had in the Nolan Batman movies instead of that stiff like single neck piece that Keaton had, it would have been just about perfect, because there's only one shot where that really works in the film, and that's where it's the shot in the trailer where the Joker's laughing and then Keaton turns around and it's just like this giant like full body twist with that scowl on his face and the zoom in. That really works. But otherwise, when he's fighting people, it's just so like I feel like that version of Batman would have been dead within like 3 attacks because there's no nuance to his movements.
That version of anyone would have been dead.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a really cool movie. I saw it a number of times. It was one of the first VHS tapes that I owned, and I was totally tripped out by the fact they had a cool Diet Pepsi commercial on, playing before the movie. There's not much I can say about the fan reaction from my point of view, because again, I was 12. It was like an adult kind of comic book movie, and it really opened the floodgates for people taking comic book properties seriously, even though they didn't quite know what to do with them for the next decade and a half. It still was nice to see someone treating the material as like every headline about the Batman movie would either open with, or somewhere in the body of the text would be some variation of "comics aren't for kids anymore." I'm like, well, yeah, I know, but it's good that other people are finally catching on.
Yeah, exactly. It's good that other adults know, and just the general populace, that these aren't just made for for little kids. But it's amazing. Sort of the marketing machine behind Batman was probably one of the most brilliant marketing films ever made. Whenever anybody sees that symbol, they immediately recognize what it is. And as fate would have it, I'm not sure if we're all interconnected in this world or not, but if you've ever seen Christopher Nolan's Following, his very first feature, on Cobb's apartment door is the bat symbol. And
Never
wouldn't
noticed
you
that.
know? Yeah. I remember I saw that. I think I think maybe the first time I saw the movie or second time, I don't know when, but I saw it and I went, "Oh my god, that's and he's directing. The world is interconnected. This is so strange." I do remember before Batman Begins was announced, I thought to myself, you know what would make the perfect Batman movie? And I swear this isn't a lie, but whatever. If people don't want to believe me, that's fine. I thought to myself, what would make a perfect Batman movie is if it was about how Batman became Batman, because I've never seen an origin story, and if it was directed by Christopher Nolan and starring Christian Bale as Batman. I swear to God, I thought that. And then I went on, it wasn't IMDb, it was some website called movie.com. And that was exactly what was on there. And I was like, oh my God, I could have made so much money. I could have been a producer on this. So it's incredible how that worked out. 31 years later, how do you think Batman holds up?
Well, let me confess something. Unlike most podcasts that I appear on and host,
Yeah.
I did not go back and watch all of the original Batman for this because I actually watched it, I think 2 years ago. And I've watched it so many times over the last 30 years
Yeah.
that it's one of those things. It's like Pulp Fiction. I can recite that from beginning to end without having a fresh memory. As
Yeah.
far as how well it holds up, I think I've gone through different phases where at first when I was 12, I thought it was like cool and grim and gritty. Then later I thought it was kind of goofy. Now it's that perfect balance of silliness, but absolute pathos. And, you can really tell that Tim Burton found that perfect, I hate to call it a property, but the perfect property to mix his weird, dark obsessions with something wider in pop culture. Because I can't think of anyone of that era to direct Batman that would have made any sense. So yeah, it's still an A+ for me.
Yeah, I really appreciate sort of the simplicity of Batman compared to other comic movies, because like every comic movie now, you need to know about the character and their backstory and the this and the that. And here it was just, here's Batman, he's a good guy. Here's Joker, he's a bad guy. And here's how they're both similar because they're both kind of freaks. And Tim Burton he always had one note as a director, which is the movie about the loners, the outsiders. Batman, although he's a rich guy living in the middle of Gotham, his parents are dead. And he always has this darker side to him where he's going around fighting crime. And there's that loner aspect to him. With the Joker, he's this guy who was a well-known criminal, got burnt in a vat of acid, was physically seen as a freak, and used that to his advantage to spread terror to everybody else. And of course, he really emphasized the loner sort of messaging with his sequel, which went way over the top and just turned into some like weird sex film, essentially.
You say that disapprovingly.
Well, it was a lot. I saw I like Batman Returns for how different and I guess you could say artistically bold it is. But I like Batman because the studio was able to hold Tim Burton back a bit, from doing all this crazy weird stuff with it. And I think that's one of those few movies where I'll say that studio interference worked to its advantage. And yeah, Batman is the perfect mix of silly camp with dark and moody. It's not too dark, as some would have it. Like, if you want to look at something that's too dark, you could look at Batman versus Superman. The title itself sounds goofy, but Batman versus Superman, you have like people reaching out to Superman like he's Jesus, all touching him when he's in the middle of who knows where it is. I don't want to say where it is because it'll sound racist. Some Mexican country.
That didn't sound racist at all.
Yeah. By not sounding racist, I sounded more racist.
Some Mexican country.
Yes, swing and a miss. The Batman taco burrito. All right.
Well, they did have the Batman Taco Bell tie-in. I remember I still
Yeah.
have the cups.
Holy shit, really?
I don't remember if they did it for the first one. I know for Batman Returns, I definitely have some of those. Yeah, with
Yeah.
Catwoman on them, of course, because I was obsessed.
Ah,
I was 15 when Batman Returns came out, and I was all about Michelle Pfeiffer.
just a little 15-year-old boner for Michelle Pfeiffer, yeah.
What do you mean little? Anyway,
I still am. All right, but anyways, yeah, it was yeah, that was God. Just McDonald's advertising with Batman Returns, and as I showed you, I had the little Batman toys. They're like, "What's that black stuff coming out of the penguin's mouth?" You know, like parents are coming, like little kids are coming out of the theater crying, and I didn't notice how dark it was, but I remember I left the theater, and my mom was like, "What the hell was that?" And, you know, but yeah,
yeah, it wasn't until watching it years later and talking to you about Batman Returns, I think I really appreciated it. But again, that's more from an adult, like really weird perspective. It doesn't work as like a teenager's comic book movie, really, because there's so much
yeah.
adult pathos going on in it. But you know, the original, it was a monster hit, so everyone kind of responded to it, even beyond the fascination of opening weekend or two. People were going back to, to soak it all up.
To see it again and again, yeah.
Mhm.
Sort of like, yeah, it was sort of the precursor to the internet. It was the precursor to the Phantom Menace in a way, and it kind of became a life of its own. It created sort of the hyped up blockbuster. Like Star Wars created the blockbuster, but Batman really emphasized it. And the producers on that film did a wonderful job differentiating it, because Richard Donner's Superman, which was wonderful and a huge hit for DC and Warner Brothers, I think Warner Brothers wanted to kind of just make, another light, fluffy, happy Batman. And the producers on this film said, no. These are wildly different characters. And they decided with Batman to really emphasize the darkness to it. And there was that initial fear when, Michael Keaton was announced that, oh no, we're going back to Adam West and all that. And that's when they created, I think, to kill down a lot of the fans' hype, that minute and a half trailer to the movie. And immediately when that trailer came out, people would be going to the Cineplex just to see the trailer, and then they leave before the actual movie started. And they would even sell VHSs of that trailer at like comic book conventions for these astronomically high prices. And people would be going by bus signs and ripping off the Bat logo for buses. It was everywhere. And that was one of the most, like, in terms of cutting the trailer, it wasn't a particularly amazingly edited trailer, but it gave you an idea right away as to what the mood of this film was going to be. This wasn't happy and zip whap bop. This was a much darker take on something. I mean, did you see the trailer when you were 12, or were you just kind of aware of it?
No, I'm pretty sure I definitely did, but help me out with this one. My recollection of it is that it did not have any score to it. It was just the dialogue and the sort of the sound effects.
Mm-hmm.
And that really stood out to me, especially thinking about it now. It's crazy because Danny Elfman had such an iconic score. And then of course there were the kind of Prince songs that you see associated with it. But to really strip everything out, it just makes it really weird. It feels like it somehow, if you're trying to sell this as the grim and gritty version of Batman, it really helps because it even takes out that pretext of like, oh, here's a summer blockbuster fun movie. No, this is just a bunch of messed up people running around like screaming and laughing at each other and blowing shit up. But yeah, I love that trailer, and especially what I was talking about earlier, that scene where Keaton flips or turns around because he hears the Joker behind him or whatever.
Yeah,
that turnaround and that zoom in on his face, that kind of like, oh shit moment, is just, that's an iconic 5 seconds of cinema that I'll always remember.
Yeah. They did put in Elfman's score in the trailer, but it wasn't until the very, very end of it.
Okay.
They put in sort of like the final little beat of Batman's theme. But yeah, mostly the trailer was sound effects. And yeah, I do know what's scene you're talking where he turns around, you hear the Joker's laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the camera pushes it in, and you're like, oh, this is a dark Batman. And there's even the scene where he grabs the thug from the beginning of the film, pulls him up to his face. He goes, "What are you?" He goes, "I'm Batman." You're like, oh, Michael Keaton actually is believable as this. Like this is and by God, this is the real Batman. And I have to say, Michael Keaton, in my opinion, is the best Batman and the best Bruce Wayne. Because Keaton, when they were filming that movie, they were trying to figure out. Keaton was he thought it would be pretty obvious that to anyone that Bruce Wayne is Batman. So how would he hide that? So he decided to play his voice at a lower octave to sort of mask it. And now everyone who's played Batman has done that. I mean, with the exception of Kevin Conroy, who kind of just plays him at a regular sort of tone of voice. The only difference is when he's Bruce Wayne, he's more up and, oh, hey, how are you? And Batman, he's a little more down. But it's like the same exact voice. But as a cartoon, you get away with that. But everything live action was copied from what Keaton did. And Michael Keaton didn't have to hit a gym and gain 40 pounds of muscle and all that. All he had to do was just kind of be believable as this person who would be this rich billionaire, but you could always tell there's something off with him. And Michael Keaton kind of has that natural thing where he's tilting his head around all the time and kind of looks like he doesn't know where he is or what, like he's sort of somewhere else mentally. And that kind of fits with him as Batman because you could just look into his eyes, which is how Keaton sort of cast him, was because of his eyes. And you could just tell through those eyes, like Christ, even his eyebrows are shaped like a bat, if you think about it. That they really are. Look at Honest Trailers. It's true that this guy would.
I'll have to look at that.
Yeah, like this guy would go out in the middle of the night and, well, in that version, murder a bunch of bad guys. Now, I guess that's one thing with Batman that I guess people took issue with, was that he killed bad guys back then. I didn't have a problem with it. I think it was the 1980s. People didn't really have much of an issue. I realized recently that Tim Burton is actually dyslexic, so he can't read, which explains a lot of his movies. And yeah, I guess that's why he couldn't read a lot of the Batman comics. He just kind of saw the pictures. But that's maybe why he didn't understand the whole no killing code.
Well, I mean, that's as far as killing, I don't. And again, I'm sorry, it's been a little while since I watched it. I don't recall him actually straight up murdering criminals. He does things like he'll send the Batmobile into the Axis chemical plant where it drops the bombs and then rolls away. So he's blown people up. But like even the alley fight, right, where he's going after the guy with the samurai sword or whatever, I get the feeling he kind of knocks him out, like,
yeah,
and leaves him there. And aside from like the Joker, I mean, he reached out and tried to save him as he was falling over that vat of acid. Yeah. Did he actually purposely kill people in this movie, or is it just sort of like there are bad guys who happen to be in the way when he was doing stuff?
Well, I think Batman would have gone out of his way to not kill people. But yeah, the chemical plant, he did just blow them up into smithereens. And then there's the guy he fought in the clock tower where he puts his hands or his legs over the guy's head and he tosses him to his doom.
Yeah. There is that. I guess
hang on one second.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, everything all right?
Yeah. If someone was knocking on my apartment door,
Ah.
they wouldn't leave me alone. They kept knocking, and I wanted to yell, "Go away!"
But no, as far as Batman killing people, I feel like it is made a point in the Nolan movies where he doesn't want to kill folks, but he had more of an advantage of being more mysterious and be able to take on people sort of one at a time when he was Batman, not when he was doing the League of Shadows training. But with the Keaton thing, he was up against a lot of like gangs of goons in that movie. So even when he threw the guy over the bell tower thing, I don't see that as him like, I'm about to kill you. It's just like, this guy is coming at me and I'm on a stairwell, a rickety stairwell in a bell tower. Either he's going over or I am. So it's I just see it more of defensive than offensive in a lot of those cases.
That's true. I do wonder though, with the sequel though, is kind of he does just straight up murder people. Like he sets a guy on fire with the tail end of the Batmobile, and then he smiles before he punches a guy over a bridge and blows him up with explosives.
Because it was cool. No,
yeah, exactly. Well, I think that's what Tim Burton thought. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing is reading the comics. That was never something that I really keyed into about how Batman is like the moral villain who's got a thing about killing people, because I saw him do it. It would happen in the comics. Now, mostly I was reading alternative stuff like The Dark Knight Returns or The Killing Joke, where he is a much darker take on the character. But that was never a deal breaker for me. I'm like, you can leave the Boy Scout stuff to Superman.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, I think that's how they differentiated it too. Like, Batman isn't a Boy Scout. He'll kill you. And again, this wasn't meant to be completely 100% comic book accurate,
Mm-hmm.
And my introduction to Batman was through the cinema, not through the comics. The cinema was that was sort of, I didn't really care to read the comics that much, to be honest. Like, they had the animated series and all that, but I'm like, no, I just like the Tim Burton Batman. Like, that's all I wanted to see. So it's I guess it's different depending on the people on how they saw that character.
Yeah. Have you ever read The Killing Joke?
Yeah, I own it.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Because that was sort of the perfect confluence of the late 80s for a movie like this to come out. And I think that I don't have any proof of this, but I feel like that sort of indirectly set the tone for, getting licensed to do that darker Batman is what, Alan Moore and Frank Miller had done with their sort of Elseworlds graphic novels that really got people, also Death in the Family, where they killed Robin a couple years earlier is right about that same time. So yeah, Batman he had blood all over him. In fact, I'm almost surprised that the version we got right out of the gate was as tame as it was.
Yeah, it's fun. I always loved how everyone they asked people if they wanted Robin to live or die, and unanimously they just voted for him to be dead.
I still get flashes of. Have you read Death in the Family? I keep asking these questions.
I'm aware of it. I know that there's an explosion inside of a warehouse where the Joker had Robin in there, and then they asked everybody if he was alive or dead, and then you find out that everyone voted that he died in that explosion. And like the first graphic is Batman holding Robin up, dead in his arms.
Yeah, and leading up to that, I mean, it's a really great story, and it's pretty twisted. But Robin did die in that explosion, but the Joker beat him practically to death.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah,
it's an iconic series of panels. I don't remember if it's the whole page or if it's just like a row of pages or panels. But you see him just with this crowbar going up, down, up, down. It's like an animatic just beating the shit out of Robin. And you don't really see his body. You just see the Joker and the blood kind of like gradually getting more and more. It's horrifying. And I think about that image probably more than I should. I don't know why.
I think maybe it scarred you in some way. I don't know.
Probably.
Yeah. But the way 89 aged though, do you think Would you be open, I guess I should ask, to Michael Keaton? Because there's rumors of him returning as Batman in this Flash universe thing. But would you be okay if Michael Keaton returned one more time as Batman in, let's say, like a Tim Burton sequel, like a one-off to the end of a trilogy that never was?
I don't need to see it. I mean, as
Yeah.
much as I like the Keaton Batman, we are talking about 31 years ago. I don't know how
Yeah.
old he was when he made this. I peg him at about 35 or so, which is one of the things I liked about his Bruce Wayne is that unlike Christian Bale or even Val Kilmer, this is a Batman who's been around for a while and he's an adult, you know.
Yeah.
That might be why he's so kind of freewheeling with things. He's like, moral codes are for newbies.
Yeah.
um,
I've done this shit for a while. They keep coming back.
right. If I don't take him out now, he's going to kill, you know, a busload of nuns and then I have to deal with him again.
Yeah.
But as far as that, I mean, so I don't know how old Michael Keaton is now. He's probably in his 60s, maybe even if his, maybe pushing 70.
Yeah, he's 69, I think. Yeah.
Perfect. Now I'm thinking about that Michelle Pfeiffer again.
Anyway,
If we saw him in a Flash Elseworlds movie or in a new iteration of Batman, it would likely be, it's not going to be him in the full costume.
yeah,
It's going to be him as like the old man who is advising the new Batman or whatever. It's like, hey, didn't you used to be Batman, kind of a thing. I just don't see him swinging off buildings or, you know, punching guys. I don't know if it was you that mentioned the Harrison Ford Blade Runner 2049 thing, and there was something else I saw on Facebook. One of my friends had mentioned, like, everyone's so hyped about Keaton coming back as Batman. Just remember, like, Harrison Ford coming back as Indiana Jones and then Blade Runner. It's not necessarily as awesome as you might have hoped.
yeah.
So that's the thing. Love Michael Keaton, loved him as the character, but this gave me all the closure I need. If he shows up and it's like a 2-minute thing, like they're like something funny, like they're flashing through all these different parallel realities and they walk into a room and there's, you know, Bruce Wayne sitting in the Batcave brooding over something still, that could be kind of cute. But I kind of got my Batman closure with Keaton with Birdman.
Yeah, yes, that was a wonderful. You know, Michael Keaton's really proved to be quite the actor over the years. You know, he's really just a wonderful to watch. God, yeah, I mean, he did Birdman, and what else did he do that was quite amazing? He did well. I wasn't a big fan of that printing press movie that he did that won the Oscar. What the hell? I can't remember the name of it because it was so forgettable.
I don't remember either.
Yeah, see, and like every writer drooled over it because it was about a writer, and that's about it.
Was it The Paper? No.
No, it was something about a bunch of guys in Boston who like uncovered.
Spotlight. Yes.
Yeah, Spotlight. That's it. Yeah.
The Bostonians.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael Keaton is one of those folks who kind of just is a whack-a-mole career. He'll be, you know, in a lot of movies and then he'll disappear for like a decade, it seems, and then he'll pop up and it's like, oh shit, it's Michael Keaton. He was in that horror movie White Noise years and years ago.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw parts of it, and I always made a joke because my dad will always listen to static radio stations. And I'm like, my dad and Michael Keaton would go to a White Noise concert. My dad would be like asleep where the radio's going. Michael Keaton would just be doing his head thing, trying to hear what's in the white noise. Like, what? Huh? You know, so.
But I really liked White Noise, and I thought he was really good in it, and that made me appreciate, like, oh, what was Michael Keaton up to at that point? Yeah, so A+. I just don't need to see a revival of Batman, especially because I'm confused because a couple months ago the story was that Ezra Miller had like assaulted a fan on, you know, in some European
you
bar.
Want me to choke you? You want me choked?
Right. So I thought he was canceled and the movie was canceled, but now it's back on and I don't know what's going on.
I don't know. Just recast Ezra Miller. He sucks. Nobody needs him. And little brat. You know, that's what I think of him. But it's when you think of 1989 Batman, it really was it kind of opened the gates to the type of comic book movies that we see today. Like, not the Marvel stuff, but it kind of makes DC to this day the dark ones, you know? Like ever since Batman, DC's like, we have to make the dark movie, whether like even with Suicide Squad or some stupid shit like that. You know, they have to kind of play up that angle, which they try to do light and fluffy with Shazam, which worked to a certain extent, but I think Batman sort of established DC's logo in a certain way. And then subsequently doing that with Man of Steel just kind of felt like a cheap knockoff. Like it's Superman. The word super is in his title. We don't need to go there. It seems a little confusing to me. But I don't know. What do you think of DC's state now?
Now I think it's, well, if you'd asked me this, if you had asked me before I watched Birds of Prey, or sorry, Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey, I would have said DC's in pretty good shape because I liked Shazam. I was also a fan of, well, I should say I really liked Aquaman because it was different. Ever since Wonder Woman, they seem to have been taking steps in a more optimistic direction and making more fun comic book movies. I wasn't a fan of Wonder Woman because I thought it was just an okay superhero movie. But I am kind of excited to see Wonder Woman 84 because I'm like, now they've gotten that out of their system, what more can they do with this character?
I forgot they made that movie.
What, Wonder Woman 84?
Yeah, because of the pandemic. I'm like, oh yeah, that was supposed to come out, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're still trying to figure out, much like everything else on their slate, they're trying to figure out, you know, if and when and how they're going to drop it. So yeah, I'm cool to see that. But I saw Harley Quinn, and that's still also sort of a goofy comic book movie, but it's almost too much of a cartoon about a really uninteresting character if you're going to play her kind of light and fluffy. I'd almost rather see a grim and gritty version of Harley Quinn, honestly. But as far as the other DC stuff leading up to that, like with Man of Steel and then Justice League and all that other nonsense, kind of like we were talking about before, how you don't want to make Batman a Boy Scout. You also don't want to take the Boy Scout of Superman and turn him into Batman, which is sort of the whole problem. Like, I remember Man of Steel, the trailer for that, the teaser, is one of my favorite trailers of all time because it sells this really cool movie that is completely underserved by the actual film.
Yeah.
Superman should not be a dick.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, even I'm even okay with Pa Kent saying, you know, maybe you should let them die because it is a really interesting moral quandary. He wasn't saying it as in, you know, fuck him. He was saying, I think he said, I think Clark at that point had said, what was I supposed to do? Let them die? And I think he said, maybe.
Yeah.
Because it's like, which is the greater threat to humanity? People finding out that you're a space god, or, you know, 25 kids on a bus getting killed. Yeah, I'm not saying either answer is right or wrong. I'm just saying you could really explore that, and maybe Clark develops his morality in spite of what Pa Kent thinks, which would be an interesting twist on the origin. So many possibilities in that movie, but they turned him into the Superman 3 version of Superman, which is supposed to be the offbeat, like, oh, this is really wrong version of Superman versus the guy that you would go to the movies to root for.
Are you referring to when Superman was drunk in a bar?
Yeah.
And using peanuts as like a weapon? He's like, what are you looking at?
I loved that he actually slept with Lex Luthor's his one female henchman, the blonde with the curly hair.
Yeah.
Like it's intimated that they had sex, and then later, after he came back and he was all good, she was like, "What about the other night?" And he's like, "I don't remember that at all." or it was, maybe it was something like, "That wasn't me," or something like that. That's twisted.
Yeah, Superman's full of shit. At least Batman knows that he's dark. At least Batman knows that he does some bullshit. And you know what? Anyone can beat Superman. Anyone. Everyone's like, oh, Superman can beat anyone. Like, no, it's the other way around. Just have a magical glowing green thing, and then he'll die. It's like, but it's hard to get. Who cares? You just have it. He's dead. Anyone can beat him. A drunk homeless guy could beat him. You could just like fucking throw a bottle of it at him.
Well, yeah, but you could also say the same thing with Batman. If you get Lex Luthor with a nuclear weapon, you just shoot it at Wayne Manor. And
Okay, but a nuclear weapon's harder to launch than to hold a little piece of kryptonite and be like, ah, got you. Yeah,
I can see where you're coming from.
yeah.
Damn it.
Yeah. I mean, a nuclear weapon takes a lot of effort to launch. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, when the theaters come back, do you think we could have another huge blockbuster release like Batman again?
Eventually, sure. Well, potentially, because that's a whole other, that's like a 6-hour show right there. Because
Yeah.
like, if the theaters come back, how long will it take them to get to their full capacity? Where there'll be enough interest and people going in large enough numbers that the theaters will be given a chance to get back to the full capacity, or it's like, hey, we're open, but no one's showing up because they're so scared. It's costing
Yeah.
us all this money to keep the lights on and popping popcorn. We got to shut down.
Mhm.
The other thing is, if they do come back and there's enough demand for people to see it in a theater, the movies are probably going to have to become shorter unless theaters start doing round the clock screenings like they did for Avengers Endgame, where it's like, yeah, we've got a 3:30 a.m. screening. Because you're not going to have, for movies that are kind of wannabe blockbusters, like not the proven quantities, like there's a new comic book property and they're like, this could be the next big thing, or it become the next Bloodshot. If they're still 2.5 hours long, you're not going to have a theater saying, yeah, we'll have round the clock screenings to accommodate the fact that our audiences are now at 50% or 25% capacity to make up the revenue that they would have had if it had been 100%.
Yeah.
If any of that makes sense.
I think absolutely it does. I think when I'd say give it 2 or 3 years, we could have that again, because I think the theaters will rebuild themselves into different type of theaters. And Batman would be one of those big blockbuster movies that you can only see in theaters for a limited time. So I think it's possible to get there, but it's not going to be anytime soon. In terms of blockbusters today, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with those. I guess Christopher Nolan's willing to murder a bunch of people just so they could see his movie. But it's weird.
Well, it's not so much, that's the thing, is it's not so much murder. It's more of just an attitude. Like if Warner Brothers is going to let him put it out,
Yeah.
because I mean, he's got some say, but it's ultimately the studio that decides
Yeah, I
when to
don't know
put
if
it
that's
out.
his decision. I don't know if the press is saying Christopher Nolan wants this film to come out. I was like, is it really Christopher Nolan or is it Warner Brothers?
Right. And on top of that, Warner's has, well, I know with Harley Quinn, they did a thing where, because that came out just before the pandemic theatrically, and then it was within a month, I think, that it was out on VOD. So I would be surprised if Warner's didn't try and pull something like a day of release VOD or very fast follow with that, so that if you're wanting to go out and see it in a theater, you can, or if you want to watch it at home, you can. It'll be $20 like everything else. But as far as murdering people, it's all choice, right? Like there are going to be people who are going to like wait out for the vaccine or wait for, people to get along further in phase 4 and probably hear anecdotal stories about like, hey, AMC or the music box has been open for a month. There've been no contact tracing cases of COVID-19 or very insignificant amounts. There's no one who's died. They're going to wait it out. But there are going to be people who will be like, not necessarily the same folks who are going to the beaches without masks on. I'm not talking about them, but the people sort of in the middle who are like, I want to go out to the movies. And these theaters are taking precautions. They're hand sanitizing everything. It's 50% capacity. You have to wear a mask unless you're eating your popcorn. I want to go see this movie on the big screen. So they're going to figure it out. And depending on what kind of experience Christopher Nolan has made for everybody, they're either going to come back and say, man, I am so glad I saw this in the big screen. Or they're going to be like, you can watch, if you've got a 60-inch TV at home, it's the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard that movie literally kills. I can't wait to see it. But yeah, I guess with that said, Batman '89 it aged like fine wine in my opinion, and for now, I guess just enjoy the vast library of movies that already exist. There's stuff coming out on demand that you could see that's coming out now. I wasn't a big fan of Greyhound, but there's other stuff coming out.
I didn't see Greyhound.
Yeah.
I don't have any idea what it's even about, except that it's Tom Hanks. And when I first saw the story or saw the title, I thought it was about a bus.
No, I think you're thinking of that Russell Crowe movie where he's an angry driver. Yeah. I actually kind of really want to see that movie. It looks so bad. It looks good. It's just Russell Crowe being Russell Crowe with like a southern accent. Like, you cut me off in traffic. I'm mad.
Wow.
I'm like,
Wow.
oh man, like, is there gonna be a scene where he grabs like a telephone and throws it at someone? Just like, I took this telephone from the hotel and brought it in the car with me. Take that, bitch! And he just throws it at her.
That sounds like they've turned that South Park meme of Russell Crowe fighting around the world
Yeah.
and turned it into a movie.
Come on, Tugger! Russell Crowe fighting around the world. You ever see that that South Park reference to Tim Burton?
I don't think so.
Oh God! You just look up South Park Tim Burton's. They're just like, everyone here sucks. No one can make fun of anybody. Like Tim Burton here. How would you like it if people said that you just make all the same dumb movies ever since Beetlejuice, and you keep on using Danny Elfman's same score, and you use Johnny Depp so much that you might have sex, that you should have sex with him already. A cartoon that doesn't make fun of things would never be able to say that. Yeah. Speaking of which, Tim Burton needs a win because, man, I think he has a very limited chest of ideas. Like, he's an animated guy. He comes from an animated background with Cal Arts and sort of the still motion stuff he did with Frank and Weenie before it was a feature and all that. And then he just kind of became this person who just rehashes everything. Like, let's put Johnny Depp in something and, put a silly hat on him, and then he can do a silly voice and dance around in front of the screen. Oh, he's the Mad Hatter. Oh, he's Sweeney Todd. Oh, he's Michael Jackson. I mean, he's Willy Wonka.
Yeah, he needs to divorce himself from the franchises, divorce himself from Disney, because, my God, that Alice in Wonderland and then Dumbo.
The worst child actors I've seen in like years.
Seriously, I mean, those kids. I don't want to knock child performers. I don't want to relive the Jake Lloyd situation, but
yeah,
that was bad. That was almost child abuse, saying like, "Hey, you're good enough to be in this movie."
Yeah. Hey, you want to take years of abuse? Well, Jake Lloyd. Now that's a story I would love to see adapted into a film. Like, what happened to his life? Because it's horrible. It's tragic. Any adult making, and of course they came from my school, who Columbia College, who were torturing this poor kid. They're making fun of him, like, oh, you're in Phantom Menace. Like, some kid had like a Phantom Menace backpack. He turned around and showed it. It's like, how fucking old are you, man? You're in college. You're an adult, and you're making fun of somebody through something that could be a scarring childhood memory, and you think that's cute? Like, how much of a fucking pussy ass bitch are you to do that?
I saw him at, I think it was Wizard World Chicago a number of years ago. And he was on the convention floor, I guess, signing autographs. And at one point, I walked by him, and he was just kind of sitting with his arms crossed at his table. Nobody was coming up to him. And he just looked he looked angry, but he looked more sad. Yeah. And then I circled back like 20 minutes later, and he was just gone. Like, it was the middle of the day. I think he just got up and left. I felt just bad for him. Honestly, if you want to see an adaptation of the Jake Lloyd story, I don't know for a fact that they're the same thing, but did you ever see Honey Boy, the Shia LaBeouf movie from last year?
Yeah.
I have a feeling that's kind of the same wavelength.
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know if his dad was like a circus performing clown or whatever, and he lived in a motel, but yeah.
But you don't know that that's not the case.
His mom was his agent, actually, who basically like pushed to get him in that movie. And like, he struck her and then ran off in a car and, got that high speed chase with the cops. And then, of course, every jerk on the internet wrote, "No, this is pod racing." Like, wow, fuck you.
I'm sorry to say it, but that's the first thing that popped in my head when you were saying that.
I know it was. I mean, that was the first thing that popped in everyone's head. It's terrible. Just imagine that. It's like, you punched your mom and got a high-speed chase, but hey, that's Star Wars reference. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so bad.
Yeah. On that note, no. But
we were talking about Batman a few years ago when this podcast started. No.
if you want to talk about someone who had a traumatic, I know, but you know me, I have ADD, and somehow miraculously I'm pressed now.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah.
Have you talked about this on air? I've missed it.
Yeah, we have. I basically just stripped naked and been like, I finally pressed that. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't do that. Just got full on obnoxious and just start name dropping people left and right.
That's what you do.
Yeah. No. But speaking of someone who has a traumatic childhood background, Jake Lloyd is to become the next Batman. Except he wouldn't fight criminals. He just fight like people who bullied him and just murder him.
That'd be cool, especially if those people actually coincidentally were criminals.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, why are you killing? I'm not a criminal. I have an excuse now. Fuck you. But
Oh.
But no, Batman 1989. You know what? It's a timeless classic. I like it. It was a movie that was sort of made on a whim. You know, they were kind of writing it as they went along. They had a story outlined. It was thanks to, I think I can't remember his name at the top of my head. I got to pull up my notes, but he kind of was the reason, the executive producer, Michael E. Uslan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I met him years ago in Florida.
Mm.
And I think I met his son. There was a comic book company called CrossGen Entertainment, which put out a bunch of like comics, and they were on the verge of getting a bunch of like big name directors to do film adaptations. And so I was hanging out with the CEO of the company, and he introduced me to Michael Uslan. I don't think I knew who he was at that point, but it was like later I was looking up because the guy kept making a big deal, like, "Oh, this is the guy." I'm like, "Who the fuck is he? Oh my God, he produced Batman."
Well, hopefully you didn't say, "Who the hell is this?" in front of him. Yeah.
No. I was just thinking it in my head.
Yeah. Yeah. Saying what you think in your head out loud. Who are you, the president? All right. Got to squeeze that in there. Michael Uslan, like he that movie really kind of happened because he had this class in Indiana University, and there was this professor who, or basically the dean of the college, not this professor. He opened up this option for a student to come up with an accredited curriculum course, and his course idea was on comic books. So he comes to the dean's office, and the dean says to him, "So you're the guy who wants to make an accredited class off of funny books? Why? Look, I love Superman, Mr. Uslan. I grew up with him. But comic books aren't serious pieces of literature. Why do you want to do this?" Uslan says to his professor, "So you told me that you're a big fan of Superman, right?" He's like, "Oh, yeah. Like I said, when I was a kid." He's like, "Well, do you know the story of Moses?" "Sure. He's this little kid. His town's about to be burnt down. He's placed in a wicker basket, and he's transported over to Egypt, where the people raise him as one of their own, and he becomes like this god." "Hey, that's great. Thanks. You said you're familiar with Superman?" "Yeah. Do you know the origin story of Superman?" "Sure. His planet Krypton. His mother and father are these two scientists. His planet's about to be blown up. He winds up on Earth, where a couple from Kansas raises him and makes him one of their own." And then he stops and he goes, "Your course is accredited." Found out? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd heard a version of that story, but not certainly the way that you've told it. It's very good.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing is the mid 80s, especially mid to late 80s, was a great time for comics. I don't know if you've ever read Art Spiegelman's Mouse.
Mm-mm.
It won the Pulitzer. There's actually 2 volumes of it, and it is a story about the Holocaust. And as a metaphor, it's a graphic novel. It's all, comics, these great black and white illustrations of the cats are Nazis and the mice are the Jews. And they have some different animal allegories, but it's the story of this survivor telling I think it was his son. his son was wanting to do a comic about the Holocaust, so he talked to his father, and it's this beautiful several hundred-page story. Definitely pick it up. I think it was the first graphic novel, maybe even the only one. I probably getting this wrong, to win the Pulitzer, but I read that. I think it was the same year, or maybe it was the year before I saw Batman.
Wow.
So I was already on the wavelength of like, yeah, fuck you, comics are for kids. I lent that graphic novel to my teacher at the time, my 7th grade teacher, and she read it in a weekend, and she came back. When she handed it back to me, she had tears in her eyes. She was like, "Thank you for letting me read this book. I never knew
Showed
comics
her.
could be this." Yeah. Well, no, she'd never like doubted me or anything. It's just that I was like, "You should check this out," and she's like, oh, "Okay, sure." So her credit, she took me seriously, which is a mistake that other people have made too.
What was the name of it again? The Mouse?
Just Mouse. It's Maus.
Oh, not without the E. Mouse graphic.
Yeah, it's Maus. It's like the German
Found
spelling
it.
of it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Mouse. But no. Having said that, you know what? Batman is something that can be taken seriously, as we saw with Christopher Nolan. I mean, he really made a very, Batman Begins was a great origin story. Dark Knight was sort of this great sort of meta viewpoint on the idea of hope and latching on to other people who can bring that idea towards us. And of course, Rises was about finding hope in ourselves. So you see, and Nolan's a brilliant filmmaker to adapt that. And hopefully one day we can get another. Hopefully this new Batman will be amazing. I'm waiting for a new comic book sort of adaptation that can break ground. I think the television version of Watchmen was phenomenal. Which
I still haven't caught up with that.
Oh, when you catch up with it, let me know. It's absolutely fantastic.
All right.
Yeah. And I've read the graphic novel as well. And maybe one day we could talk about Zack Snyder's adaptation of the movie, which is, it was okay.
I watched that somewhat recently, like within the last few months. I think during the pandemic, so it feels like it was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's kind of
yeah, exactly. It's like, I appreciate what you're trying to say, but dude, the slow motion and the music, it's like your own style just chokes out the story. That and Malin Ackerman. Nice girl, not much of an actress, but yeah. All right. Well, thanks.
Watch before you write off Malin Ackerman. Watch a movie called Final Girls if you haven't seen it. She's very good in that.
Okay.
It's a supporting role, but she's very good.
Okay. I'm gonna guess it sort of plays to her style in a way.
Kind of.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I certainly shall check that out. But no, thank you for coming on, for reminiscing about Batman 1989. If you can find the VHS tape with Bugs Bunny advertising all the Warner Brothers stuff on it.
I loved that.
Get your Batman cap. Get your Batman. Yeah.
It's all in the catalog.
Yeah, it's all in the catalog.
Oh, wow.
It's like South Park with the member berries, Remember that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying not to get stuck in the member berries with this nostalgic stuff, but it's all we have now because everything's gone. All right.
Pretty much. On that cheery note,
yeah.
Thank you for having me on. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, thank you as always, my friend. Check out Ian Simmons at kickseat.com with his Kicking the Seat podcast. You can catch me at ypareviews.com. The YPA stands for You'll Probably Agree. See you later, folks.
Bye.
Wait till they get a load of me.